You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now, turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a man who wants to join a local sports club and a woman at the city information office. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good afternoon, City Information Center. How can I help?
Hello, I'm interested in joining a sports club. I've just moved here and I'd like to know what options there are.
Certainly, we've got several popular ones. A lot of people start with the Riverside Sports Club.
Okay,
They're well known for their swimming facilities. They teach both beginners and advanced swimmers, and they also show you how to train properly for competitions.
that sounds useful. Do they keep the classes small?
Yes, usually just a handful of people.
Could I arrange an individual session if I wanted?
Yes, they do private coaching as well, though most people enjoy the group activities.
I see.
And there's a membership benefit. If you renew for another year, you automatically get a 20% reduction on the fee.
That's good. But are there other clubs I could try?
Yes. Another one is Hilltop Fitness Center. It only opened about half a year ago, but has become popular quickly. They focus on promoting healthy lifestyles with lots of different trainers.
Do they mostly deal with weight loss or dieting?
Not exactly. They're more interested in strength and well-being. For example, they design exercise plans that will build up your bones and muscles over time.
I understand. Do they have a website I could look at?
Yes, just search for the name, it should appear. Also, every Thursday night they hold a free lecture about training methods. You don't need to book, just turn up at 7:30 if you'd like to see what they do.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now, listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
There's also another club that might interest you. It has quite an unusual name, the Arena Club. That's spelled Arena.
Right.
They have a good reputation in the city. They offer a little bit of everything, but they mainly focus on vegetarian diets and how food supports training.
Oh, I'd be interested in that. My sister is vegetarian, so I'd like to learn more. Where are they based?
They're just next to the Central Market, so they always have fresh produce available.
Convenient.
Yes, and they run a short special course on using a knife safely and effectively, for cooking, of course. It's only 2 hours, but very popular, so you'd need to check availability.
Perfect. I'll definitely look into that. Thanks for your help.
You're welcome.
That is the end of Section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 2. You will hear the chairman of the Highways Committee in Granford giving information to local residents about proposed changes to traffic and parking. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight. My name is Peter Haynes, and I'm the chairman of the Highways Committee. The purpose of this meeting is to let you know about a series of new traffic and parking regulations we're planning to introduce in Granford. I'll begin by outlining the main changes, and then I'll answer your questions. Why exactly are these changes necessary? Well, we've noticed a steady growth in the number of vehicles using our local roads. This increase has been especially visible during the construction of the new shopping center on the edge of town, but more generally, it's the sheer rise in traffic overall that has started to worry us. Up to now, we haven't seen a big rise in accidents, but of course that is not something we want to risk in the future. We also carried out a survey with local residents, and the results were revealing. Many people mentioned that parked cars make it very difficult to see clearly when driving along certain roads. We were expecting the biggest complaints to be about the congestion outside the school during the morning and afternoon rush, when parents drop off or collect their children. Surprisingly, that wasn't at the top of the list, and although some people did mention noise and fumes from large vehicles, those were not considered the main problem either. We believe the new regulations will bring real improvements, but of course rules are only effective if people actually follow them. At present, working out how best to enforce the regulations is still something we're discussing with the police.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Right, on the screen you can see a map of the town center. The high street runs across the middle, and School Road is over on the right-hand side. There's already a set of traffic lights where Station Road meets the high street, but we've decided to install another set at the junction of the high street and School Road to help control the traffic more effectively. We also think a pedestrian crossing is essential. We considered putting this on School Road, directly opposite the school entrance, but we were worried this might cause delays, so instead, we'll place it on the high street, directly in front of the supermarket. This is one of the busiest parts of the town, and the crossing should make a real difference. Next, parking. At the moment, cars are not allowed to park along the high street outside the library. We're going to relax that rule and create some new spaces there. However, at the far end of the high street near School Road, parking will still not be permitted. There will also be a new no parking sign on School Road itself, just outside the school gates. This ban will extend for 25 meters, which should make it safer for both drivers and pedestrians, especially on the bend to the north of the school. Disabled drivers currently have spaces next to the supermarket, but delivery lorries often block those areas. To solve this, we're moving the disabled parking bays to the small side street leading up towards the bank. It may not be perfect, but it should work better than the present situation. Another improvement will be to the pavement on School Road, just before the school. We're planning to widen the pavement by about half a meter. This will give children and parents more room when walking there. And finally, delivery vehicles. At present, lorries can stop at the supermarket on School Road at any time, which causes problems. Under the new rules, they will only be allowed to load or unload before 8 o'clock in the morning. The supermarket on the high street will continue with its current arrangements.
This is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 3. You will hear two psychology students called Sarah and Daniel discussing a project they are planning to do together. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
We need to decide on the topic for our research project, don't we? Daniel, were you considering something connected with memory?
Yes, I thought we could investigate memory, recall how people remember and repeat information.
Oh, any special reason? I know you're interested in cognitive psychology as a career.
That's true, but almost everything we do is relevant to that. Actually, there's an optional third-year module on memory and learning strategies. I might take it, so this project could be a useful preparation. If I choose that module, I won't have to do a dissertation.
That sounds sensible.
Well, I thought we could test how the number of words people are given and the way those words are presented affect how many they can recall.
Right. We'd need to allow enough time for participants to complete the tests.
That shouldn't be a problem if we start straight away. Other possible projects would take much longer, which makes this one a good choice.
And we wouldn't need expensive equipment. We're not running brain scans or anything. Though, to be fair, the department does have plenty of resources.
True, but we should check with the tutor before we begin. I think our aim is fine. It's not especially ambitious, but the assignment only counts for a small part of our final grade. Still, we'd better make sure no one else is doing the same topic.
Yes, good point. Otherwise it would be repetitive.
By the way, did you look at that book on memory from our reading list?
The one by Coleman. I skimmed through it for my last project. It was full of theory, which I didn't really expect.
Exactly. I'd hoped for more practical advice. It does mention some new findings about short-term memory limits, though.
Yes, I noticed that.
I also read an article by Jane Price about how memories can be triggered by strong emotions.
Oh yes, the one describing experiments after stressful events.
That's it. I already knew a little about the topic, but her analysis of the statistics was really detailed, very impressive.
Was that the article with the diagrams of the brain areas involved? They were so clear.
No, I think those diagrams were in another paper.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Anyway, let's go through the procedure for our project. We'll need to get started quite soon.
Right. First, we need to choose the words for the memory test. I think everyday words would be best, and they can't all be the same length. So how many sets should we prepare? Maybe for different lists.
That should be fine. Each list will need a large number of words.
Then, for each word list, we'll have to count how many words there are and measure how long it takes participants to study them. We'll need to keep an exact record of everything.
That'll take some time. And we also need to decide how the words will be shown, written on a screen, spoken aloud, or both.
Good. After that, we run the test. Do you think we can test several people together in the same room?
Probably not. We'll need a separate space for each participant.
Right, and we'll have to label the answer sheets clearly. We could even use different colors. Then we just wait for them to recall the words. I think 3 days should be enough before we collect their responses.
Then we record how many words each participant remembered.
Yes, and finally we compare the numbers to see if there's a clear pattern.
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a lecture on a biology course about how plants and animals adapt to urban areas. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today, we'll be discussing the way living creatures respond to life in cities, and I'll share some research findings on the subject. From an evolutionary perspective, cities represent dramatic and sudden transformations in the environment, changes of a scale we would normally expect only after countless generations. For a long time, scientists assumed that very few creatures could survive these conditions. For example, one species known for being remarkably versatile is the rat, which has repeatedly been observed adapting to a variety of surroundings. Another well-known case is the sparrow, which uses rooftops and ledges much as it once used rocky cliffs near the sea. But recent evidence indicates that these examples were just the beginning. More and more creatures are learning to adjust to life in built-up areas, and what surprises researchers is the remarkable speed at which these adjustments are taking place. Let me give you a few examples of recent studies. At the University of Wisconsin, a researcher named Daniel Harper examined preserved specimens of small urban mammals, including chipmunks and voles. These samples, collected over a period of more than a century, revealed an interesting pattern. Their brains had increased in size compared to those from rural populations. Harper argues that this change reflects the challenge of city living, such as finding reliable sources of food and managing the constant presence of new risks. Another researcher, based at the University of Zurich, is Dr. Laura Klein, who has been studying the behavior of urban and rural robins. She's noticed that the birds in towns are generally bolder when confronted with familiar threats, but they tend to hesitate or retreat when confronted with anything entirely unfamiliar. This is thought to be a practical response to the unpredictable city environment. In the United States, Professor Mark Chen at Duke University has explored how animals manage stress in urban surroundings. He discovered that several species release reduced quantities of stress hormones when exposed to constant disturbance. It's a sensible adaptation. An animal that panics whenever a bus goes by is unlikely to thrive. Finally, a study by Megan Wallace and her colleagues investigated how city squirrels exchange signals. They found that these animals often rely on movements of their tails as a means of communication. This is also observed in woodland settings, but in cities it appears to be even more common, possibly because sound signals are harder to use in noisy conditions. Looking ahead, one possibility is that city life will eventually produce species unique to urban landscapes. However, not every modification may prove to be permanent. Once the environment becomes familiar, animals may gradually lose the features that initially helped them cope with it.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.